So before I get into this video, I just want to give a pre-warning that I will be talking about some major spoilers that happen in the light novel and then of course the anime itself, and kind of throwing a bit of a difference between some characters that have changed between the anime and the light novel. So you have been warned, there will be spoilers in this video. When looking at the differences between the light novel and the anime for Rias Gremory, I think a lot of anime-only fans have not seen what Rias Gremory becomes in the main scope of things, particularly in the light novels itself. When you look at the anime perspective, Rias Gremory is the centerpiece for the story currently. And I've always felt that in the second half of the light novels, Rias Gremory kind of takes a step back on being the major centerpiece for Issei's life and kind of is one of the supporting pillars for Issei, but isn't the major one, and she's kind of doing her own internal things where, of course, later on in the light novels themselves, Issei and Rias end up having their own separate teams, and then of course Issei takes some of those members from her team and puts them into his team, with Rias Gremory filling in those leftover gaps with new members. But I feel like going on further in the story, as much as Rias Gremory still is a major centerpiece, she isn't the core of the entire story itself, and I think a lot of anime-only fans are going to get a bit of a culture shock when looking at where the story goes, and that's a matter of if and when Season 5 and beyond ever happens. But looking at from, again, an anime versus light novel perspective, there's a lot of interesting things that change as the light novels progress. You can look at Vali, for example, and Issei, and the internal conflict that is going on between them in the anime. And a lot of anime fans think that the story for them is going to end with Vali dying and Issei being triumphant, because they see him as the main antagonist and the main villain of the story. But in fact, there is a very large difference between the anime and the light novel and how that is perceived, because very much in the early stages, the story is seen as them being the rivals, but as the story progresses, many different things shift and change, and how they look at each other drastically changes throughout each volume. When you get into the light novels and get much further on, you realize there is a kindred spirit and a friendship between them, and yes, there is still that rivalry, but it's a competitive nature with that friendship sort of on the side as well. And even Vali gets along with Issei's parents and makes an apology, and they all get along and have fun together. It's very similar to Rias Gremory in the sense of anime-only fans see one side of a very large scope of a story, and I think it's just really interesting to see how the dynamics change in the story. I wouldn't say very quickly, but it gradually changes as you go further on in those 25 volumes, and I'm just not talking about Shin particularly because, again, I'll talk about that in its own video once I start reading those and getting deeper in, but I just like kind of reflecting on the 25 volumes that I've read and looking at them and seeing the gradual shift and change in particular characters, and Vali and Rias are two of the major characters that have definitely changed from an anime perspective. There are a couple of other characters as well. For example, you'd look at Ravel Phoenix and Akano, though I feel like Akano's more always kind of been that fun, charismatic character that's kind of sidelined as well, and not as much of the centerpiece, but still occasionally comes in and out of the story. But Ravel went from being seen as that character from an anime perspective as someone that Issei would never get along because, of course, who she's associated with, her family members. And in the light novels, and I've spoken about this in an individual video talking about her, is how she's become such a centerpiece for Issei. And the reason why I'm using these as references is because they all have a very similar situation to what Rias has. They proceed very differently in the anime than they are to the light novels, because the light novels, of course, as you read on further, the characters change. I mean, that's an inevitable process. As story progresses, the characters change and you see them in a different light. But what I find really interesting is just how someone that's majorly in the centerpiece, which again is Rias, that has been that supporting pillar that has helped build Issei up, and they've kind of gone their own separate ways, but they are still very much close and in love with each other, and they still, again, come to each other and confide in each other and have that also, that fun competition between each other. That's very similar to Issei and Vali. As much as they were seen as rivals, they still have that fun competition between each other. As much as Rias and Issei are lovers, they still have that fun sense of competition as well. I think it's just a really interesting spin of when you look at, again, anime and the light novel, not to harp on too much, there is that gradual change and shift, and the characters change in different areas of where they stand in the overall grand scope of things. Though I do hope when reading into the Shin volumes that Rias Gremory does get a bit more attention, because I don't want her just to be completely sidelined and you just occasionally see her for a couple of pages and she's kind of just the cheerleader with the pom-poms. Kind of a little bit the same with Akano as well. I want to see them both come in and out and play major centerpieces with Issei, because of course they're meant to be in a intimate relationship with him, so it would be nice to kind of see them a little bit more. And of course they share the same house and everything, so there's always those fan service moments, but I would kind of want to see them all work together with some overarching issues, which I'm just kind of hinting of what I think will probably happen later on. But I just, again, when reflecting on the journey for the 25 volumes of the light novels and then looking at an anime-only perspective, it's completely two different sort of perspectives that you can see, and it's just fascinating to reflect on them. And I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts from an anime-only perspective, from an anime and a light novel perspective? Another group of characters that I do also think that have significantly changed as well, and probably don't get as much, I would say, light in the actual anime itself, is the parents of Issei. I mean, when you look at the anime perspective, you see them as kind of being a bit of a comical relief. The father's kind of there to, you know, bring Issei down a couple of pegs or two, remind him of his ways when it comes to women. The same with his mother. His mother's always doting on the girls, but then also kind of nudging Issei to be a bit more polite and a bit more upbringing. But when you get into the later on parts of the story and the big revelation where his parents do discover about the truth of the situation and who he has become and who the other girls are and everything around them and the massive ongoing issues going on and just how vast and ever-growing the world is between all these gods and deities and devils and angels and fallen angels and you name it, they definitely take a much more interesting step forward where they are trying to be more proactive. They're very much there to support Issei through thick and thin. That's where I mentioned at the start of the video with Vali. Vali ends up confiding in Issei's parents and apologizing about something that he said, while also throwing Issei under the bus about something else Issei said. And that's where the parents take such a big shift and a change. They actually sit there and support Vali and bring him into the family and treat him as one of the other family members. And that's what I really love about the change in the anime to the light novel. There are definitely some things in the light novel that I kind of wish got a little bit more fleshing out. There are definitely some characters that still, to me, feel a little bit sidelined. I would use one example as Asia. I feel like she has not changed as much in the light novels in comparison to the other girls. She's kind of always been the one on the side that's always there to kind of be a little bit upset with the other girls getting too close, but she's definitely, I would say, gotten a lot more brazen, a lot more forthcoming about her emotions, but she still has not made the same amount of strides as other characters have that have grown in the light novels itself. But again, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts about the difference between the anime and the light novel and the overall progression that it has definitely made? And the reason why I say the difference between the anime and the light novel also is because there are some big significant things that have changed throughout the light novels due to a certain season that drastically changed how things turned out, and then in the newest season of High School DxD that tried to retcon that. And I do have a video planned to go over the differences between the actual anime and the light novel in a more intricate detail when going over each individual volume and comparing them to the episodes of the anime, but that is a video planned. There are some light novels that I still have to sort of backtrack and re-review because of those differences, so I will definitely have those videos out in some point in the future. But again, I'd still love to know your thoughts. But if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I will see you beautiful nerds in the next video.